Greetings from Florida, USA. Thank you for the opportunity to share this brief report from our experiences at COP26. We began each day with the sunrise and looking at sheep out our window in our country cottage. It was then a short drive down a narrow country road to the train station to COP26. Each day we had to take a COVID test and show that at the first security check. We then proceeded through 2 more security checks to get inside the blue zone. Once inside the blue zone, there were multiple options of programs in the pavilions, plenary sessions, meetings, and the action hub. One of the early plenary sessions featured UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who applauded young people, indigenous people, and women's groups for keeping the feet to the fire of the delegates. He called on governments to keep pace with the people. He welcomed the U.S.-China agreement, but quickly added, "We must do much more." This plenary session continued with Patricia Espinosa, Executive Secretary of UNFCCC, who noted that there were 130 countries represented at COP26, that together represented 90% of the world's forests. She said progress in forest has been one positive outcome of this meeting. She then concluded by saying announcements in Glasgow are encouraging, but not enough. Commitments need to be delivered, and actions need to be verified. Vanessa Nakati, a climate activist from Uganda, was the star of this plenary. She said, "Science is clear. We need to reduce CO2 by 11% every year till we get to net zero. We have had 25 COPs, each with commitments, but CO2 keeps rising. This is why activists outside these halls don't see any progress, despite new commitments." The largest delegation at COP26 does not belong to a country, she said, but to the fossil fuels industry. Commitments, promises, pledges will make no difference. We need action. COP26 has us on a pathway of 2.4 degree Celsius rise in temperature. Business and finance leaders, please prove us wrong and show us your integrity. We need more money in the Lost and Damaged Fund. A compromise with some important steps is good, but not enough. A key theme throughout COP26 was that the time for talk had passed. We were now in a climate emergency. Here are a few snapshots of what it was like in the blue zone at COP26, with groups attempting to deal with that climate emergency. Panama stated that they are a carbon negative nation already, and that they must do more. They called to keep the 1.5 Celsius alive. If we do not, this conference will fail and the world will fail. Poorest people will suffer the most. Leaders do not settle for anything less than 1.5 C. Leaders bring youth, indigenous people, and marginalized people into the discussion. Panama concluded saying 1.5 is not a choice. It is a necessity, a moral obligation. A Canadian display showed the polar bears with their life jackets on as the Arctic Sea continues to melt. Tuvalu said it was very difficult to get to COP26 from their country. They came, though, with optimism that COP26 would be a defining COP. They further stated that the optimism was found in the opening sessions, but by the closing sessions, it was no longer promising for small island states. They quoted John Kerry, "The impacts are now, not something in the future." They are already losing land to sea level rise. They want to see stronger focus on doubling the finance or adaptation. Humor was also used to show the fossil of the day. A number of international conservation groups banded together for the Nature Pavilion to show the power of nature-based solutions. The Maldives said they are frustrated in trying to impress world leaders on what climate change is already doing. They said their islands are already flooding, already experiencing saltwater intrusion, and they are losing loved ones to more extreme weather. They concluded, noting that the world spends trillions to respond to the pandemic while continuing to support fossil fuels. Money, they said, is not the problem. What they said is we need to treat the climate crisis like the emergency it is. Indigenous people brought a voice of conscience and called attention to the damage they are already experiencing from climate change. They labeled current policies, quote, a death sentence, unquote. The indigenous climate activists denounced COP26 deal schemes such as carbon trading favored by polluting nations as what has already led to ecological destructive projects like biofuels and dams. There was one pavilion that seemed custom-made for many URI members, a place to go for co-creative reflection and dialogue. Artists were on hand too to display their works through many mediums in the Blue Zone, including this display. One of our Blue community team members at COP26 was Chris Castro, who is the Director of Sustainability and Resilience for the City of Orlando. Chris shared Orlando's award-winning GreenWorks program that focuses on 7 areas: clean energy, green buildings, local food systems, zero waste, livability, clean water, and electric and alternative transportation. Orlando is taking many pathways to sustainability, including the incorporation of the UN Sustainable Development Goals into their planning. In fact, Chris made the case on how local governments are essential to achieving global goals. Cities need to act because they are 55% of the global population. They generate 80% of the GDP. In addition, 80% of cities do not meet air quality standards, and they are responsible for 75% of global emissions. They cannot be ignored. Through the America Cities Climate Challenge, Orlando is working to reduce emissions through reducing building energy use, increasing renewable energy, reducing vehicle travel, and electrifying everything. They have mandated that all city buildings achieve at least Silver LEED certification. They have issued a $17.5 million bond for energy efficiency. Currently, Orlando obtains 41.9% of its energy from coal and only 1.6% from solar. But Orlando has set an ambitious goal of making 100% of their municipal operations renewable by 2030 and citywide by 2050. Orlando has a number of strategies for alternative transportation, including pedestrians and bike paths, e-bikes and scooters, rideshare, light rail, bus system, and plans for a train to come soon. They have implemented an aggressive campaign to make 70% of their vehicles electric by 2050. Combined, Orlando has become a global model for responding to climate change. Jared Myers of First Climate Bank was also one of our Blue community team members. First Climate Bank is the first B Corporation bank and is using its financial resources to accelerate the transition to renewable energy. Jared shared that his experience was one with mixed emotions. He stated, "We have the technology and capacity to achieve sustainable, exciting, and inclusive future, but it was clear that we don't have alignment among the decision makers." Part of this was influenced by greed and the amount of fossil fuel lobbyists, and part of this was because the issues are much more complex with multiple perspectives across cultures, age, and nations. Achieving agreement among so many is hard work, but is also critical work that has a limited time horizon, or else we all lose. Jared also said, quote, "It was wonderful to see so many people supporting efforts to end fossil fuels and move to clean energy, especially when I know too many people in Florida and the United States that still think climate change is a debate rather than a scientific fact. It is irrefutable that the climate is changing and that humans are the major factor behind it. This also means that humans have the power to change their ways and therefore change the climate to a state that supports the future for our children and all life." Finally, Jared said, quote, "I was most excited by the push among our youth to recognize the urgency of action. They will have to live in our future world, and therefore their voice should be more valuable than those that are profiting from the current state of fossil fuel emissions, wealth inequities, and selfish behaviors." End quote. There were some major accomplishments at COP26. These included over 100 countries agreed to stop deforestation by 2030. Over 100 countries also agreed to reduce methane 30% by 2030. The US and China have a new agreement to work together again, an agreement that was terminated under the Trump administration and now revitalized. A new zero-emission vehicle council, co-chaired by the UK and the US, was created with 30 countries agreeing to transition to zero-emission vehicles between 2030 and 2040. For the first time ever, COP, the decision was made to target against fossil fuels, calling for a phase-down of unabated coal and a phase-out of inefficient fossil fuel subsidies. An international carbon market was also set up. Despite these gains, there are many challenges remaining. Some of the major ones include that despite the progress, the current plans leave the planet on a course to see temperatures rise to 2.4 to 2.7 Celsius rather than the desired 1.5 C. This will have catastrophic results if not modified. Loss and damage funding is not resolved. The coal language was watered down from phase out to phase down, and there are no mechanisms in the COP process to enforce agreements or commitments. The US was welcomed back as a refreshing change from the Trump regime. John Kerry, who led the delegation, stated that science must be trusted, that the US supports mitigation, and we must keep language in the document that keeps coal out. Unfortunately, India, backed by China, watered down the coal language. Before COP26 began, John Kerry said that 3 things needed to happen to make this meeting successful. 1, we needed to accelerate the scaling up of proven technologies. 2, we need to bring China into the existing agreement that the US, Canada, Japan, UK, and EU were already part of. And 3, we need to get developed nations to follow through on their existing financial commitments. Our team of 9 delegates worked mostly on sharing 3 new technologies. Our new Blue Community app to assist communities and destinations in sustainability assessments and planning. The All Clams on Deck project that plants shellfish to clean estuaries and bays while sequestering carbon. And the Aptura, the world's first solar electric vehicle. Our new Blue Community app provides assessments and sustainability planning and has a companion certificate program offered through the University of Central Florida and has a variety of optional training and development programs. One group we shared the app with was the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network Youth Program that has active chapters in 17 universities around the world. The app is a tool that students can receive college credit for while making a difference in their communities. With few communities having a comprehensive sustainability plan that engages the community, this is a new technology that is in need of scaling up. The All Clams on Deck is a nature-based solution. Planting clams helps clean the waterways and estuaries and bays and mitigates red tide. It provides fresh, sustainable seafood for local restaurants, creates new jobs, and reduces the need to import seafood from China, and promotes the growth of seagrass that sequesters carbon at a rate of 30 times greater than trees. With only 1% of the potential permits being utilized in Florida waters, this is a technology that definitely can be scaled up. Ed Childs, owner of 3 waterfront sustainable restaurants, led this effort for our team.
We're here at COP26, right outside of the Blue Zone, and we're beating the drum about coastal resiliency and the importance of bivalves, shellfish, seagrass for coastal resilience. We got to do it before it's too late. Support shellfish farmers for climate change.
We sought out several ways to share these technologies, including meetings with the media and the Action Hub, creating our own side event at the Ice Hub, where I gave a full presentation on the Aptura vehicle. The event included a cocktail reception and entertainment by the UN Youth Ambassador and rapper A.Y. Young, and a presentation by the UN We Speak dance program that is aired on Netflix. We had one day where we had lunch with the CEO and the Chief Financial Officer of Aptura to discuss how we can bring this new solar vehicle technology to more people and scale it up in the process. For those who might be unfamiliar with the Aptura, this is the video I made specifically for COP26 to share that technology.
We live in a world obsessed with expansion and exploration, endlessly searching for answers out there. What if the answer isn't just in the stars? What if infinite possibilities are the ones we've yet to think of? What if the same innovation that helps us out there can also help us here on Earth? Our responsibility is here, to this planet, to create a better tomorrow for future generations. As the world's first never-charged solar electric vehicle, Aptura offers a 1,000-mile range with over 40 miles a day of free solar charging. If 1 out of every 20 vehicles on the road were replaced with an Aptura, Americans would save 18 million gallons of gasoline every day, or 6 billion gallons per year. Each Aptura owner can reduce their carbon footprint by over 14,000 pounds of CO2 per year. That's what 884 25-year-old pine trees can absorb in a year. Imagine a world where technology gives more than it takes. Imagine beyond the stars.
While the goal of 1.5 Celsius may be on life support, it is not dead. We can do this if we act now. As the French pavilion stated, let's make our planet great again. Thank you. Together we can make a difference.